The broken girl in chains. The chains dragged behind her, loud and sharp against the cold stone floor. Every step she took left a faint trail of blood. The alien girl's knees shook. She was barefoot, dressed in torn cloth, her skin pale and marked with bruises. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something deeper, something already broken. A giant guard pulled her forward by the collar. The arena gates opened with a metallic groan. Inside, the crowd waited. They didn't cheer. They didn't cry. They watched with cold eyes, hungry for pain. High above them sat the overlord of the pit, a gray-skinned beast with glowing red eyes. He leaned forward, his voice echoing through the arena. "Today," he announced, "we show the price of weakness." The crowd roared. The girl was pushed to the center, her arms chained, her feet forced apart. In front of her stood a platform, a metal table. Sharp tools lay neatly on it, blades, hooks, and saws. Everyone meant for pain, none meant for mercy. Hidden among the shadows inside a small cage near the lower stands, a man watched. A human. Dirty, tired, forgotten. His name was Jace. He had been in the pit for 2 months. No one spoke to him. No one cared. But when he saw the girl, something inside him tightened. She looked no older than 16 in human years. Too thin, too quiet, too alone. The executioner stepped forward. A thick creature with 4 arms and no eyes. He lifted a blade and placed it against the girl's arm. She didn't scream. The blade sliced slowly. Blood dripped onto the floor. Jace stood up. He didn't know why. His heart was pounding. His legs shook. His hands gripped the metal bars of his cage. "What are you doing?" whispered another prisoner beside him. Jace didn't answer. He stepped forward and grabbed the front of his cage. His voice was rough from weeks without use, but still loud enough to carry. "Stop it," he said. No one heard, or maybe no one cared. The blade pressed deeper into the girl's skin. She still didn't cry. Her eyes turned to Jace, just for a moment. They were yellow and soft like dying stars. But behind them was something else. Silence. The kind of silence that only comes after too many screams. Jace grabbed a broken piece of bone from the floor and slammed it against the cage bars. "Said stop," he shouted. This time the arena went quiet. All eyes turned. A human, standing, yelling. For a slave, the overlord rose from his throne. "Bring him here," he ordered. 2 guards rushed down. Jace didn't fight as they dragged him out and threw him into the center of the arena beside the girl. The overlord looked at him with curiosity. "You want her pain?" he asked. Jace looked at the girl. Her arm was bleeding, her breath shallow. She didn't look at him again. "Yes," Jace said. "Give it to me." The overlord laughed. The sound was cruel and sharp. "Why?" he asked. "Because she can't take more," Jace replied. "But I can." Silence again. The crowd leaned forward. This hadn't happened before. "Very well," the overlord said with a smile. "Give him the blades." The executioner turned. Jace was stripped of his shirt, his arms tied behind his back. The first blade pressed into his skin. He did not move. He did not scream. Blood ran down his side. The girl blinked. A tear slid down her cheek. Not because of her pain, but because someone else was bleeding for her. No one had ever done that before. No one ever would again. The human who moved, they said humans were weak, quiet, useless in the pit. And yet in the middle of the blood-soaked arena, one human had stepped forward, not to fight, but to take the pain meant for someone else. The alien girl still knelt in silence, her eyes barely open. The blades meant to tear her apart now dripped with his blood. Jace, no one knew his full name. No one cared where he came from. They only knew that he had arrived in chains like the rest, just another body to feed the pit. But today, the human had moved, and the entire arena watched. A few hours earlier, the sun had not yet risen, but the sky above the slave pits was already dark with smoke. Jace sat inside his cage, back against the wall, staring at nothing. His body was thin from hunger. His lips were cracked. The scar on his left shoulder still bled from last week's punishment. And yet, he did not look broken. He looked quiet. Like someone remembering something painful, but still holding on. The guards had kicked his food bowl under the bars that morning. Rotten meat again. He didn't touch it. Instead, he listened. Screams echoed from the lower cells. Not loud ones. Tired ones. The kind made by people who no longer had the strength to beg. But one voice was different. Small. Shaky. A girl's. And not crying for help, but humming. Barely audible. A soft tune, almost like a lullaby. Jace turned his head. A few cages down, he saw her, curled in a corner, hugging her knees. Her skin was pale violet. Her hair was silver, tangled and full of ash. The bruises on her arms were deep and dark. And she was singing to herself. Not to fight fear, but to stay human. Or whatever her kind called it. Why her? Jace muttered to himself. That afternoon, the guards pulled her out. Public dissection, one of them chuckled. The crowd loves the small ones. Jace watched them drag her away. He told himself not to care. He told himself to look away. But something in her eyes stayed with him. Not fear, not even hope. Just a quiet acceptance of death. Like she had already died 100 times before, and so when the blade touched her skin in the arena, he moved. Now Jace knelt beside her, arms bound, blood running down his back. The crowd was silent, not out of respect, but confusion. This had never happened before. The Overlord stepped down from his throne. His armor shimmered with silver plating, his boots stained with old blood. His voice rolled like thunder. "You will die slowly, human," he said. Jace lifted his head. "I didn't come to die. I came to stop you." "You think you can protect her?" the Overlord scoffed. "I already did." The executioner raised another blade. This one curved and cruel. It pressed against Jace's ribs. But before it could cut, something strange happened. The alien girl moved, just slightly, barely enough to notice. She reached out and placed one small hand on Jace's shoulder, and the blade froze in the air. Soft hum filled the space. The executioner stepped back, confused. "What is this?" the Overlord barked. Jace turned, just barely. The girl's hand was glowing, not bright but pulsing, like it was reacting to his blood, or his pain. Then, her lips moved. "Not again," she whispered, and her voice wasn't weak anymore. It was ancient. The Overlord backed away. "Put them in the pit," he growled. "Both of them. Tonight." The crowd gasped. The pit wasn't just an arena, it was a graveyard. No one came back from the pit. Not alive. And definitely not human. The guards dragged them both away. Jace was half conscious. The girl held onto his arm, helping him walk. No one had ever touched him with kindness in this place, not until now. As the heavy gate closed behind them, sealing them in darkness, the girl whispered one last thing. "They're afraid of you." Jace blinked. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "Because you moved." Then the floor cracked and the pit opened. Beneath them, monsters waited, and night had just begun. The first cut darkness swallowed them. The iron gate slammed shut behind Jace and the alien girl. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the sound of distant growls echoed through the stone chamber. This was not just a prison. This was the pit. The underbelly of the arena, where broken bodies were thrown to die and beasts were fed with screams. No rules, no mercy, and no exits. The torchlight above faded, leaving only silence. Jace's breathing was shallow. Blood soaked his side where the blade had sliced deep. His shirt had already hardened with dried blood, and every step sent pain through his ribs. But he kept walking. The girl, still barefoot, still bruised, walked beside him. She never asked for help, but her fingers brushed against his arm, steadying, Him. Her name was still a mystery, but her presence spoke louder than words. "Why did you do it?" she finally asked. Her voice was soft, like the wind before a storm. "Because someone had to," Jace replied. "No one ever does." Jace looked at her. In the dim light, her silver hair shimmered. Her eyes, though tired, still had a strange glow, like stars trying not to die. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." He nodded. "I'm Jace." Suddenly the ground shook. A metal gate to the right opened with a loud screech. Then came the sound of breathing, heavy, slow, like a furnace filled with hate. Something massive moved in the dark. Jace pushed Lyra behind him. A shape emerged, 8 feet tall, hunched forward, covered in bone armor and black fur. Its eyes burned yellow. Its mouth opened sideways, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Lyra gasped. "That's not just a beast, it's a bloodwalker." "You know it?" Jace asked. She nodded, her voice shaking. "They're used to clean the pit, by eating everything." The bloodwalker roared. It charged. Jace had no weapon. He grabbed a broken chain from the wall and wrapped it around his hand. He turned just in time to catch the beast's first strike. The force knocked him back. His shoulder cracked against the stone wall. Lyra screamed his name. The bloodwalker lunged again. Jace ducked, slamming the chain into its jaw. The metal snapped, doing nothing. The creature lifted him by the throat and slammed him to the ground. Everything blurred, his vision darkened, his ears rang, blood filled his mouth, but through it all, he heard Lyra, not screaming, singing, again, the same soft song from her cage. Only this time, it wasn't a lullaby. It was a command. The beast stopped. For a moment, its eyes shifted, confused almost, scared. Lyra stepped forward, hands trembling, her voice steady. Jace, coughing, blinked through the pain. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he asked. "Remember what you said?" She whispered. "You said you could take pain." She raised her arm. Her skin split open. Her blood glowed blue. And then she pressed her bleeding hand to Jace's chest. His pain vanished. His wounds didn't close, but the pain was gone. His body filled with warmth. Light. Power. "What is this?" he asked. "My gift," she said, eyes shining. "My curse." Jace stood. The bloodwalker roared again. But Jace didn't step back this time. He moved forward. He picked up a bone shard from the floor, sharp and jagged, and when the beast attacked again, Jace dodged under its claw, rolled behind it, and stabbed the shard deep into its neck. The bloodwalker screamed and collapsed. Dead. The pit fell silent. Lyra dropped to her knees, her face pale. "That power, it burns me." Jace rushed to her and held her up. "Then don't use it again," he said. "I had to," she whispered. "They need to see. You're not like them." Above the pit, in the shadows of the arena's highest tower, a figure watched through a glowing lens. A masked commander turned to the Overlord. "He killed a bloodwalker with his bare hands," the commander said. "That's not possible." The Overlord's lips curled into a smile. "It is, if the girl marked him." "Should we eliminate them now?" the commander asked. "No," the Overlord said. "Let the pit finish what it started. If they survive, again, then we bring out the knives." Deep in the pit, Jace and Lyra sat against the wall, breathing hard. He looked at her. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked up, voice cold. "Now, they'll send the monsters that used to be people." Jace frowned. "Used to be?" She nodded. "The ones who chose the pain instead of the blade." And just then, the next gate opened, and 5 shadows stepped out. Silent, tall, twisted. The real test had just begun. One night in the pit, the door creaked open again. But this time, it wasn't a beast that stepped out. It was them. 5 figures. Once human, now something else. Their skin was stretched, scarred and painted with black ash. Some had metal plates bolted to their bones. Others had lost their eyes, replaced with glowing red stones. None of them spoke. They didn't have to. Their silence was enough to freeze blood. Lyra leaned into Jace. They used to be prisoners, just like you. What happened to them? He whispered. They gave up. Jace stared as the five stepped closer, surrounding them. Gave up on what? On feeling, she said. On pain. On memory. They chose to become monsters just to survive the pit. Can they be stopped? Lyra looked down. Only if they remember they were human once. The first one attacked fast. A tall man with arms like metal clubs. His movements were stiff but powerful. He swung at Jace, aiming for the head. Jace ducked, barely missing the strike. The stone wall behind him cracked from the impact. He rolled to the side, grabbing a sharp rock from the ground and slashed the attacker's leg. Sparks flew, metal beneath skin. They're not just broken, Jace muttered. They're rebuilt. The second figure moved in, shorter, thinner, but faster. 2 blades were fused to his forearms. He spun like a machine, slicing the air. Jace tried to block, but the blade cut his arm. Lyra screamed. The attackers turned to her. No! Jace shouted, standing in front of her. The third figure, female, hair like fire, stepped forward slowly. Her face had no expression, only deep cuts shaped like tears. She raised a hand and placed it against Jace's forehead. His vision blurred. Flashes. Memories. Pain. His mother's scream. The cell he grew up in. The fire. He dropped to his knees. She was pulling out his worst memories, feeding on them. Stop, he whispered, voice shaking, but the memory didn't stop. He was 7 again, hiding under a burned table, watching soldiers drag his father away. Lyra crawled to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. Come back, she said softly. You're not there anymore. He looked at her, then took a breath. He stood up and head-butted the woman hard. She stumbled back. Jace grabbed her wrist and twisted it, forcing her to the ground. The 4th and 5th came at once. Twins, moving in perfect sync. One had claws. The other had chains. They rushed Jace together, but this time, he was ready. He dodged one, kicked the other into the wall, and turned the chains around the second's neck. He fought with no weapon, just anger. And purpose. But still, it wasn't enough. There were too many, and his body was too tired. The first attacker grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the stone. Jace couldn't breathe. Everything was fading again. Until Lyra screamed. Not in fear, but in fury. Her hand lit up, and the ground beneath them cracked. A pulse of blue light burst from her chest, blasting all 5 attackers backward. They hit the walls hard and didn't move. Lyra collapsed after. Blood poured from her nose. Her body shook. Lyra! Jace crawled to her. What did you do? I gave too much, she whispered. I'm not supposed to use it like that. Why would you? He asked, her eyes locked onto his. Because you didn't let them take me. Above the pit, the Overlord watched in silence, his jaw clenched. They're still alive, the masked commander said beside him, even after facing the converted. The Overlord didn't respond. He turned to a third figure behind them, a female, draped in silver robes, face hidden behind a dark veil. Is the mark active? He asked. She nodded. The girl has chosen him. It's irreversible now. Then send the Blade Priests. The commander stepped back in shock. But they've never been released. They will now. The Overlord growled. Because this isn't a story of survival anymore. Then what is it? The Overlord stared into the flames. It's a war of souls. Back in the pit, Jace carried Lyra to a safer corner, holding her gently. Her breathing was slow but steady. He cleaned her face with a piece of his shirt, whispering to her softly. You saved me, he said. She opened one eye. We're even. Now. Jace laughed. Just once. It was the first time he'd laughed in years. But the joy didn't last. The walls began to glow. Symbols appeared. Blades dropped from the ceiling, hovering in the air, spinning, whispering. And from the far end of the pit, a single voice echoed, "Kneel, marked one. Your soul will be carved next." The mark of protection. The air was no longer just cold. It vibrated, as if the pit itself was breathing. Slow, deep, and angry. Jace stood over Lyra, sweat dripping from his brow, eyes locked on the floating blades. They spun without sound, sharp, edges glowing with blue fire. Around them, symbols lit up the stone walls, ancient, unreadable, but alive. And then, the voice spoke again. "Kneel, marked one, or the girl dies screaming." Jace clenched his fists. His muscles were weak. His body was bruised and bloodied, but his will burned hotter than ever. He looked down at Lyra. Her breathing was faint. Her lips moved. He leaned in to hear her. "Don't kneel." Before he could answer, the blades shot downward, but none touched him. They froze inches from his skin, glowing, waiting, and then the light on his chest pulsed. Jace looked down. There was a symbol there, burned into his skin during Lyra's outburst. It wasn't just a scar. It was a mark. Alive. Lyra's mark. Suddenly, a door opened at the far end of the pit. Not a gate, not bars. A door made of bone carved with runes, and out of it stepped 3 figures, tall, cloaked in black. Their faces were hidden behind silver masks shaped like screaming mouths. Each one carried a blade, not in their hands but floating behind them like shadows. The Blade Priests. Jace had heard the stories from the other prisoners. They didn't speak. They didn't kill fast. They carved memories out of your soul. "Thorvi, Mark must be tested," one of them whispered, voice dry as ash. "He is not worthy," said the second. "We shall make him worthy," said the third. They moved like ghosts. No footsteps, no wind, only pressure, as if reality bent around them. Jace stood his ground, holding a broken pipe in one hand like a sword. The first priest raised a finger. The floating blade behind him sliced through the air. Jace barely dodged. The blade cut a line across his arm, hot and burning. Not just flesh, but memory. Suddenly he was no longer in the pit. He was in a ruined city. His old city. Fire everywhere. His mother screaming his name. A soldier dragging him through the street. His body trembled. The pain wasn't in his body. It was in his heart. "They're using my memories," he whispered. The second priest stepped forward. Another blade spun toward him, this one piercing his side. More visions. A cell. A metal bowl of rotten food. His sister's voice, crying in the dark. He screamed and dropped to one knee. "Stop it," he cried. But the priest did not stop. They fed on pain. They wrote with it. "Submit," they whispered. "Break." And then, a hand touched his. Lyra, barely awake, eyes half open, her fingers glowing faintly. She whispered something in her native tongue, and the mark on Jace's chest lit up like fire. The blade stopped. The priests froze. The mark began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. A blue ring of energy formed around Jace and Lyra. The ground cracked beneath them. The first priest stepped back. She awakened it. "Impossible," said the second. "That mark belongs only to the chosen of her bloodline." The third priest raised his hand again, voice now shaking. "He is only human. This should not be." But it was. Jace stood. The energy from the mark poured through him. He didn't float. He didn't shine. He just stood taller and walked toward the priests. "You used my pain," he said. "Now feel yours," he charged. Not with a scream, but with purpose. He slammed the broken pipe into the first priest's mask, shattering it. Underneath was not a face, but a black hole, a swirling mass of screams. The priest collapsed. Jace turned. To the second, the blade flew toward him again. This time, he caught it. It sliced into his palm, but he didn't drop it. Instead, he pushed it into the priest's chest. The second priest dissolved into ash. Only the third remained. He stepped back, raising both hands. His blades flew in all directions. Jace raised his arms to protect Lyra. But before the blades struck, they stopped midair, floating, surrounding him, and then they turned, against their master. The blades pierced the last priest through the back. 1, 2, 3. He fell, gasping. Then silence. No more blades. No more whispers. Jace dropped to his knees, panting. Lyra crawled toward him, resting her head against his shoulder. "How did you do that?" she asked. Jace looked at her and smiled faintly. "I didn't." "Then who?" He looked down at the glowing mark. "We did." Above the pit, the Overlord stood from his throne. The firelight danced in his cold eyes. He survived the priests. The masked commander swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" The Overlord walked to the edge and stared down into the darkness. "Now, we break the girl." But down in the pit, Jace held Lyra close and whispered something no one expected to hear. "In a place of death, you're safe now, I promise, and for the first time in years." She believed it. The arena erupts. The chains didn't rattle anymore. They were gone, melted, shattered. And in their place stood two figures, battered, bleeding, but unbroken. Jace and Lyra, in the deepest level of the pit, where thousands had died, and no one ever rose again. They stood with the ashes of the blade priests around them. The mark on Jace's chest glowed faintly, but now there was a second ring around it. A ring that pulsed in time with Lyra's heartbeat. Something ancient had been awakened, and the Overlord knew it. High above, the arena filled with noise. Guards lined the walls, weapons ready. The crowd didn't cheer. They were waiting, afraid, because no one had ever returned from the pit, not in one piece, not with their soul. But now the ground shook, torches flickered, and the gate to the pit exploded. A wave of energy tore through the walls, blasting stone and dust into the air. Figures stepped into the light. First Jace, shirt torn, scars glowing blue, his eyes sharp like blades. Then Lyra, her body weak but upright, her silver hair glowing like a halo, her hand wrapped around his wrist like she belonged there. The crowd gasped. Some stood, some ran, and some dropped to their knees. Because they saw the mark. They remembered the stories. The chosen bond between a lost royal and the one who bled for her. A bond that could not be broken. "They are alive," a voice whispered. "That human bears the mark." And then, chaos. The Overlord roared from his throne, slamming his fist down. "Kill them! Now!" Dozens of guards stormed the arena floor. Shields up, guns ready, blades out. Jace didn't move. He held his ground. The first wave of soldiers charged. The first soldier swung his blade, and Jace caught it with his bare hand. His palm bled, but the mark burned brighter. The blade snapped in two. Jace punched forward, sending the soldier flying. Then more came, a dozen at once. Lyra raised both hands. A wave of light burst from her, blinding them all. The guards dropped their weapons. Their helmets cracked. Some began to scream, not in pain but in confusion. "I see her in my mind," one cried. "I see her memories." Her gift wasn't just energy, it was connection. She was forcing them to feel again, even if they didn't want to. Jace moved through them like a storm, not killing, not destroying, just defending. With every strike he protected Lyra, with every breath she fueled his strength. They weren't warriors. They were a bond, and the arena had never seen anything like it. From the stands, the prisoners watched, men and women from 100 species, beaten, forgotten, hopeless. But now hope burned in front of them. A human and an alien girl, standing together, bleeding together, winning together. An old man in a cage whispered, "Is this the rebellion?" Another prisoner stood, grabbed a broken pipe, and roared. For the marked, it spread like fire. Prisoners broke their cages, fought guards, grabbed weapons. Some died, many fell. But they didn't stop because something in the air had changed. The arena wasn't theirs anymore. It was his and hers. The Overlord watched from above, his face still, but his fingers twitched. "We need to burn them all," he said coldly. "Even the spectators?" asked the masked commander. "Everyone," the Overlord said, "before that bond spreads beyond this pit." He turned to the woman in silver robes, the same one who had confirmed the mark. "Send the flamers," he ordered. "And if they fail," he looked down again, "release the black chain." Below, the battle raged. Jace now had a real blade in his hand. Not sharp enough, but enough. Enough to fight. Lyra stood at the center of the arena, her eyes closed, her voice humming a melody that made the torches flicker. "They're trying to break us," she whispered. Jace looked around. Let them try. But then, the flames came, from every wall, from every entrance. Flamethrowers mounted on spinning machines. The fire rose high, hot, angry, and from the middle of it walked a man, not just a guard, not a priest, not even a beast. He wore no armor, only black chains wrapped around his skin like armor. His eyes glowed red. His mouth didn't open, but the chains around him spoke. "I am pain made flesh. I am the one they burned to keep the others warm. I am the end of the marked." The black chain had been released. Jace raised his blade. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Don't fight him like a human," she said softly. "Then how?" She looked into his eyes, and for the first time their hearts beat at the same rhythm, and the mark exploded into light. The blades turned around, the fire danced across the walls. The black chain walked through it, untouched. His body was wrapped in moving chains that clinked and hissed like snakes. Each link pulsed with dark energy, memories of pain and hatred. Trapped inside, he wasn't a man anymore. He was a weapon, a monster created by the Overlord for one purpose, to end anything touched by hope. Jace stood between him and Lyra, sword in hand, blood running down his arm. His knees trembled, but his eyes were calm. Lyra's fingers touched the mark on his chest. The glowing circle began to spin. Again, and faster this time. "He doesn't bleed like the others," Jace whispered. "He already gave everything up," Lyra said. "His name, his face, even his soul. Can we stop him?" She looked at the chains. The dark links moved on their own, whispering in a language only the broken could hear. "We can't stop him," she whispered. "Not alone." Above the arena, the Overlord watched through gritted teeth. "This is the end," he growled. "Kill them and burn what's left." The masked commander turned to the remaining guards, but the guards hesitated, because down below, something was changing. The prisoners who had once cheered for blood were now standing, watching, and waiting. The black chain moved. Fast. Faster than any man should. His arm extended, and a long black chain shot toward Jace's chest. Jace raised his sword. Too late. The chain wrapped around his arm and pulled. Bones cracked. Jace screamed. He was yanked through the air and slammed into the arena wall. He hit the ground, coughing blood. The crowd gasped. Lyra ran to him, but the black chain raised a second link. This one moved toward her, coiling in the air like a whip. She closed her eyes, but it never struck. Jace caught it, bleeding, shaking, broken, but still, standing. His hand grabbed the chain, the mark on his chest glowing like a star about to die. And then, the chains began to slow. "No," the black chain hissed. "You are not strong enough." But Jace didn't answer. He pulled, and the chain ripped free from the black figure's arm. The man stumbled. The crowd stood, and the prisoners shouted, "He bleeds!" Jace didn't stop. He looked the monster in the eyes. "I wasn't strong because I had no pain," Jace said, voice shaking. "I was strong because I carried it." The chains around the black figure snapped one by one. They turned in the air and pointed at him. They're turning, Lyra whispered. They remember who they were, because every chain wasn't just metal. It was made from the memories of those who died in silence, and now, they screamed back. The chains wrapped around their master. Tight, pulling, burning. He screamed, not with pain, but with fear. "I am the end," he shouted. Jay stepped forward. "No," he said. "You were just a cage." And then, the chains pulled him into the earth. He vanished beneath the arena floor, and everything went still. The Overlord stared down, unmoving. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Lyra stood and raised her hand. The mark on Jace's chest lit the air like morning sun, and all across the arena, shackles, collars unlocked, weapons dropped. The prisoners stood in silence. Then one bowed, another knelt. Then the entire arena lowered their heads, not out of fear, but respect. The Overlord backed away from the window. "This can't be," he whispered. "What do we do now?" the masked commander asked. The Overlord turned, trying to run, but he wasn't fast enough. A dozen prisoners had already broken into the tower, and Jace's name was on their lips. Below, Jace sat beside Lyra, in the center of the arena. Bodies, chains, and old pain surrounded them, but they held each other in silence. Finally, Lyra spoke. "You should be dead." Jace chuckled weakly. "I've been dead since I got here." "Not anymore," she whispered. She placed her hand on the mark. A second one appeared, one on her chest, glowing in sync. The bond was complete. Not master and protector, but equals, chosen by pain and bound by choice. The arena wasn't a prison anymore. It was a beginning. Weeks later, a fleet of ships landed on the planet. Not slavers, not warlords, but survivors, refugees, people who heard the story of a human who took the blades and gave hope back to the broken, and by his side, an alien girl who was once just a number, now a symbol. And together, they wrote the first words of a new age, not in stone, not in blood, but in light.